Hello, good evening. Welcome to Sheffield Forum Live. Yeah? Just try again. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Sheffield Forum Live. Nearly there. We all looking forward to this? No? Tell your faces then, right? You're all lucky sat at the front, don't worry. Normally at one of my comedy nights I'd pick on the front row, but what I'm really bad at is names. So as you'll see, I've got all your speakers tonight's names written down. Last time we did this, the only pen available was a permanent marker. So for 7 days I had to explain why I got 3 people's names written in permanent marker on my hand, and no one believed me. They thought I was making it up. They just thought it was something to do with my stalking conviction, maybe, I don't know. So yes, you guys, you don't fancy sitting down at front, no? No? Thank you for being brave and sitting at the front down here. Who's been to one of these events before? 1 of you? 2 of you? Oh, yeah, 3, 4. That's a good percentage-wise, isn't it? So you know what to expect, don't you, yeah? Right, and you've not got a clue what's happening there, have you? Going, what's this guy talking about, yeah? Basically, what's going to happen, you're going to have your 3 speakers you've all paid to see. We're going to get your first one up, then we'll have a little short break, and then your next speaker, then a proper break, we can get a drink and everything else. And then your final speaker, and then I'll tell you all to go home. And that's about top and bottom of tonight. Is that good for you all, yeah? Yeah? Right. It's not a difficult question, right? It's yes or no answers. Are you all good with that? Yeah. Right. Are you ready for first speaker then? Yeah. Yes? No? Are you ready for first speaker? Right. Tell your face and start clapping, whooping, cheering, all that kind of stuff. Give us a round of applause for Alex Reid. Jonathan Reid. Alex Reid. Jonathan Reid. No, let's try that again. Told you really crap with names. Jonathan Reid.
Hi everybody. I'm Jonathan Reid. I'm a scissor maker from Ernest Wright. We're a scissor manufacturer in the centre of Sheffield. I'm mainly going to be talking about scissors, but I also want to talk about my experience at Ernest Wright as well, because I believe somewhere there's a life lesson. I don't know what it is, but we'll find out. So, I haven't been involved in manufacturing at all before Ernest Wright. I originally did advertising. I went from translation to copywriting and then into advertising. So it was just a wild leap that I ended up in scissor making. But when I told my friends I was a scissor maker, they always ask, how did you get into that? And I have many variations of this story, but this one's the truth, I swear. I normally shorten it or change aspects of it. But one day at work, I was sat in my car just asking my partner, what do I do? I'm miserable. I can't do this all my life. What do I do? And we're talking back and forth, and she's on her way into town, and she walks past a chalkboard just sat in the street, and it said, "We're hiring, scissor makers wanted." And she said, "Be a scissor maker," as a joke. So I actually didn't reply to that message at all. I just ignored it. I don't know when she last heard from me, but what she didn't know was that I had gone onto the number pad, I rang Ernest Wright, and I said, I'd love to be a scissor maker. He just said, are you free tonight? Do you want to pop round? And I said, yeah, I'm at work, and I'll come round afterwards. So I went to Ernest Wright shortly after, and I sat down and I said, I've got no experience in scissor making. I'm really sorry. Paul said, that's okay. There's nobody with experience in scissor making. There are actually only 2 people in the UK with experience in scissor making, and they already work there. They were the last 2 master putters left in the UK, both in their 80s at Ernest Wright, so they're really eager for someone to come in and take that knowledge from them and learn how scissors were made. So I was quite nervous. I felt like there was a lot on my shoulders regarding scissors. And I really wanted to do the best job I could. So I said, before you offer me the job, I will hand in my notice tomorrow, and I will come to the workshop every single night and practice the machines. And he said, yeah, absolutely, no problem. So I came at 6 o'clock and left at sometimes midnight, but normally it was around like 6 to 9. And I would just run through all of the machines and, I'd just run through all the machines and get to know them all, see if I was actually made for this. It's a very wide set of skills. There's grinding, polishing, cold smithing, and there's a lot of things that you have to know about scissors. It really did surprise me how much there is to know about scissors. But I thought this would be cool. I've always wanted to work with my hands. I'd gone the university route after my parents said that's the life that I'd want. They were both mechanics, and they sort of said, I'm not, resentful is maybe the wrong word, but when they said this isn't the sort of life you want, I just feel like I missed out on a lot, because I really do love working my hands, and I always wanted to. And maybe going to university was the wrong option for me. I think if I could do it all over again, I would have been working at Ernest Wright since I was 16. But no, I landed there at the age of 26, and I learnt everything from Cliff and Eric. These are the last two master putters in the UK. A putter is one of these old-timey words for a job. It's short for putter-togetherer, and it's the people who sit at a bench and put scissors together. It's not that simple. There is a lot to know about it, and I will go into that. But when I worked here, I thought the biggest factor to me was just, having fun at work, working with my hands. It was quite nice. But what I found was that I was learning so much about Sheffield history and cutlery and the steel work, something I was always aware of. I always knew about Sheffield steel. But it wasn't until I actually worked in it that, I really wanted to learn more about it, and it felt quite sad learning about what happened to the industry. I guess the place it started was that when I sort of fell in love with making scissors, in my free time, I would buy 50 pence, £2 pairs of scissors from eBay in bulk, and I would restore them. And one day in the workshop, there was a pair of scissors sent in. These ones here. Now, that's a pattern of scissor called the Turton. It's named after Frank Turton, a man born in the latter half of the 19th century. He passed away in the 70s, but this is the Frank Turton pattern. And this scissor here has a stamp on it that was only used between 1920 up until the 1930s. So this was the first time the scissor was sent in for refurbishment, and we did let them know that we don't paint the handles anymore. It would be completely shiny. We just make it look like one of our brand of scissors. Frank Turton worked with Eric. Eric actually, the one at the back, Eric worked in Frank Turton's workshop, and Frank Turton left Eric the Turton pattern. So this design of scissor here. So we still produce that pattern to this day. However, we were sent one in that needed refurbishing, and that looks like a Turton that we sell today. But this was the first time it was sent in for refurbishment in almost 100 years. And that's what we plan to do with our scissors. We want them to last a lifetime. Maybe get them sent in for resharpening every now and again. If someone leaves them out in the rain or something that go rusty, then we'll refurbish them. But the idea is to make scissors that can be handed down and that last a lifetime. This interest in restoring and refurbishing scissors is how I learned about all the cutlery companies. So I have, if I had to bet my life on it, I would guess 360 pairs, but I have boxes of scissors just strewn about the house. And yeah, my partner doesn't like it, but it'll be worth it when I restore them all. But I look at all these logos, and I want to know about each of these companies. So I have these giant books. I have 2 of them, about that thick, and they're quite wide books. And they list all of the cutlery manufacturers in Sheffield. And half of the scissors that say Made in Sheffield on them aren't actually in that book. So no matter how many different brand names this book lists, it still isn't a true record of how many cutlery manufacturers there were in Sheffield. There were so many. And now we're down to 1, Ernest Wright. And this is where I find that the history of Sheffield Steel's a bit upsetting, because everything in this city seems more like a reference or an Easter egg to Sheffield Steel, yet there isn't much manufacturing or steel production going on still. I mean, my flat building's named after a steelworks that was here. You've got the Saw Grinders Union, which is a bar, the Lead Mill, which is a nightclub. You have all these references to Sheffield Steel, but not much is actually made here anymore. I mean, I looked this morning at the census, the 2021 census data, and the percentage of people employed in steel and cutlery in Sheffield is less than 1%, which, to say at its peak, Sheffield Steel and Cutlery employed over 200,000 people. It's gone down to less than 1,000 employed in cutlery. So now we just live in a city that just references steel rather than really is world leading in it. I mean, stainless steel was invented here. We have the Bessemer process, which now we just have that at the museum and a pub named after it. I mean, stainless, keep it clean. I mean, they're all just references, fun little, Easter eggs about Sheffield Steel. So I think what makes me really happy about working at Ernest Wright is that there is a true impassioned drive to revive Sheffield Steel. The reason it did start to decline was because post-war there became, and countries across the globe were starting to industrialise, and it became much cheaper to outsource work abroad, which is nobody's fault, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we simply couldn't compete with overseas manufacturing. So slowly, more and more work was just outsourced away from Sheffield. People needed to lower their prices more and more and cost save more and more. And just before the industry went under, the quality of scissors also got worse because people had to produce more and they had to work for less, and we had to find the cheapest solutions to get pre-made scissors over here. So again, nobody's fault really that it declined. It was just a fact of how the world was moving at the time. What we're trying to do at Ernest Wright is do it the old way. Nowadays, you have a sort of method called vertical business. So every process takes place under the same roof. What it used to do was that there were so many little mesters and workshops spread all over Sheffield that had very narrow and specific roles. So a scissor would start at the forgers, and they would stamp the patterns out. Then they would go to another workshop where they would bore a hole into it. And then after the holes had been bored, it would go to a grinder, at which point it would go to a hardener. Then it would come back for dressing and finishing and polishing. Then it would go to the putters. And then after the putters, normally putters would edge the scissors, or they would go back to grinders. So you had this massive chain, this ecosystem of businesses that would all work together and be paying almost each other's bills with the services they required. But it was cheaper to take those processes in-house. And as all these businesses were absorbed by bigger businesses, and those bigger businesses ultimately went under, Sheffield industry went with it. So it was all just a reaction. So today, we don't want to take everything in-house, and we're really struggling to find people in Sheffield that we can outsource work to. So our scissors, the blades need to be at a certain hardness, but we want the shank of the blade. The shank is the long neck between the blade and the bow where you'd put your hand through. The shank needs to be soft while the blade hard, so we need a type of hardening that will only harden the blade. So we can't. So salt bath hardening is the solution to that. That was the old method. That's what we used to do. We found a salt bath hardener in Sheffield, who we work with, who has to heat the scissor blades to a certain temperature. You can't really know how hot these blades get. He does it by eye. He looks for a certain colour. He knows when those scissors are at a certain temperature. He'll quench them and then temper them. And it's all done by eye. It's a very old-fashioned method to hardening scissors. Unfortunately, this last year, gas prices went through the roof. And the salt hardener, the only one that we could find, not only in Sheffield but in the UK, closed down. So we've actually moved to a more modern method of induction hardening. We can still be selective about what part of the blade we want to harden, but now that it's more modernized, there's less of that sort of, I don't know how to say it better, but that old-timey skill to it of a guy dunking a blade into some molten salt until it's the right color and then quenching it. It works, but it's just one of the weird idiosyncrasies of making scissors. It's just this specific knowledge that we won't be able to do in-house, and that we want all of these individual industries to help us. We also send our stainless steel to a different hardener because it's just hardened a different way. We work with a master polisher here in Kelham Island, Steve Wright. He's got a workshop down the road. And then we also have to go to another business for engraving, because there are so many ways to engrave a blade to ensure that you don't get a surface that's really prone to rust. And that's what we're really trying to do. It would, in fact, be cheaper to bring it all in-house, but we are just trying our hardest to work with other businesses in Sheffield, and I absolutely love that. I think that's great. And it's made me fall more in love with Sheffield history. I absolutely love that one of the priorities at Ernest Wright is keeping a part of Sheffield's heritage alive. It really is. There are much better ways to make money than make cutlery in Sheffield, but it's a crucial goal that we want to achieve at Ernest Wright. Cynically, I believed once that like handmade stuff is, I don't know, it's just a high price tag. It almost seemed fake. I couldn't imagine that, you know, you can make things better by hand than a precision machine could. But what I know now is that at least when it comes to scissors, it really is important that it's done by hand if you want the best quality scissors that you can get. So my opinions on that have changed, and I'm assuming it's the same for other industries as well, but I've just been naive and assumed people say handmade because they want to put a higher price tag on it. But no, it does make a better scissor. One thing to consider is the actual complexity that does go into a pair of scissors. You wouldn't believe it, but it's so precise. There are 3 important angles to get on a scissor blade. The blade not only needs to be twisted, it needs to be curved, and it also needs to be hollowed. So an example of the hollowing, which you might struggle to make out here, but there's a larger gap in the middle of the blade here, whereas the blades come flat together there at the blade's edge. That's why you put a hollow into it, so the insides aren't rubbing against each other. Now, to put a hollow into a blade that also needs to be curved and also needs to twist is a very, very difficult thing. It's actually quite easy for a machine to do, but the reason why automated machines make lesser quality scissors is because of how subtle a change in a scissor blade can make the cut feel. There's a part of the scissor at the back called the Reid, and that makes constant contact as well as the blade's edge. And if the Reid is fractions of a millimeter too high or too low, it's going to make the scissor feel horrific. It's going to either feel too loose, really tight at the point, or incredibly tight at the pinch. There's loads of terminology. I'll try to avoid it. But you can rectify all these things with a hammer and a tiny anvil. But it's very difficult to do. If you hit that scissor blade with the wrong force, in the wrong spot, with even the wrong hammer, it completely transforms how that scissor feels, and it's quite difficult to get that scissor feeling perfect. What we're aiming for is even pressure up the entirety of the blade. And if anyone wants to visit the Ernest Wright workshop, we've got an open door policy, really. You can come by any time and see how it's all done, and you can get a tour of the workshop. But I don't know if you'll love it as much as I do. This is the problem. I have no idea how interested people are in scissors, but I am obsessed. But we have companies all over the world that buy scissors specifically from us. We're obsessed with every aspect of the scissor. The quality of the metal, for example, we will really get obsessed over what type of steel it is, the hardness we put it to, the angle of our edges, because all these things are important based on what it is you're cutting. So, I might be wrong, but I'm on camera, so I better get this right. But I'm pretty sure it's McLaren that buys our scissors to cut the metal gauze. And these scissors don't even get sent back to us for resharpening. That's how important the hardening is to us. I mean, C60 steel, at the hardness we put it to, means it has the correct toughness and strength, which sound like the same word, but they mean different things when it comes to metal. But toughness, strength, and hardness are all ways of measuring how a scissor reacts to force. And this pair here, has the perfect amount of all three. I've been there for 4 years now, and I'm not a master putter. I've only recently been called a putter by the two masters, but I'll get there eventually. In 4 years, there are still skills that I haven't learnt yet. For example, this is James, one of the people I work with. I'll always give my scissors to him for him to grind the hollow on the outside of the blade. It's just one of my least favourite jobs. It's something I'm not very good at, not very confident at, so I leave that to him. And then we started making thread snips, which don't even look like scissors, but apparently it falls under the job title of putter. We're expected to put those together. I didn't know how to put these together, but Cliff came in to help me. Cliff's one of the master putters, and I was struggling with the same thing on this pair of thread snips, and he said, just hang it over the corner like that and tap it. It kinks the screw on the inside and it allows you to cross the points better. It's just one of these weird little quirks, these little hacks that you have to learn, and there's one of these unique quirks to every single pair of scissors. And I don't know, it's fun, yeah, it's frustrating that I can't know it all. I actually only work on a range of 20 different scissor types, and I haven't even started on mailbag scissors, that's what they're called. The ones with the massive It looks like a duck bill almost, but I haven't worked on those. Some point though. Skills that I have gotten very good at though is this machine here. This is one of our most modern, high-tech pieces of machinery, the Viotto. It's 1968, I think, and it's got this insane number of dials and gears, and you have to stick this long screwdriver underneath it, and you just have to get that bed to move a certain way under an angled stone for it to grind the inside of a scissor blade. That is what I'm most proud of, and it's one of the hardest skills to master. It almost feels like a waste of time because that machine is solely for grinding the inside of scissor blades. So, and I believe it's one of 3 left on Earth, so it's not a transferable skill, unfortunately. However, this job insanely opened so many crazy doors for me. I can't believe it. And I didn't even ask for any of this stuff or even reach out to anyone. I wasn't trying. It all fell in my lap. Oh, and this is why you'll rarely see me without a hat. I went bald at 26. But I got to meet now the King Charles. I got to go in the repair shop, and I'm now a trustee on the charity, a trustee at the charity Heritage Crafts. Heritage Crafts is really important to me. They're a charity that help fund crafts around the UK that are going extinct, and annually they publish a list of endangered crafts because there are quite a lot of crafts in the UK that there are only a few people still doing them. They have a list of extinct crafts as well. Scissor making was on the list of endangered crafts, but now we've got it off the list, and there are scissor makers working in Sheffield again. So take what you will from all that, but what I've found is that, yeah, I did take a pay cut to work at this job, but I was miserable before now. There are so many benefits to just, I don't know, enjoying where you turn up to on a day. You have to spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at a place. There's a benefit to ensuring that you're happy there. I think one of the biggest things that have changed my life is I don't have that evening anxiety. I'm not lying awake in bed, not wanting tomorrow to happen because I don't want to turn up to work. This job is really challenging, and it does take a toll with regards to stress because we're trying to keep an industry afloat and we keep running into hurdles, be it suppliers going under, prices of things, prices of even the steel that we use. So it does get stressful, and it does take a physical toll on your body as well. But it's so much more worth it than the advertising job I had. I mean, advertising, it was fun, it was stressful. I just don't think I was built for advertising. I don't even think I'm built for scissor making. My back is in a poor state. But I'm happy with the decision I made. Only regret is that I didn't start making scissors sooner. Cliff and Eric have now retired as of last week. They're still coming in, but in their 80s, they were still refusing to go home. We had to, during COVID, we'd have to lock the doors because they kept walking in. They actually love it too in their old age. They're really cheery guys. And we absolutely love spending time with them, and there's so much more to learn from them. But in their 80s, they've only just retired. Now it's down to me, Neil, James, Tony, Sam, Sabino and Jago, we are the guys in the workshop now that are carrying the torch. And as I say, there's still a lot to learn from Cliff and Eric, but hopefully we've helped revive Sheffield scissors at least. Now, I am only 3 minutes early, but are there any questions? No? If not, well, I guess that means I covered it all. Oh, yes. Oh, I've got 2. Sorry. Go ahead.
Are you developing new kinds of scissors?
We are. Glad you asked. There's this one pattern. It's our 13-inch heritage tailor's shear. These are scissors that, were discontinued and they've not been produced since maybe the 80s. And we're making those specifically for tailors on Savile Row. But because it's a new type of scissor, there are loads of quirks to these ones too that we have to learn. It's taken us a year to produce our first batch of 13-inch heritage because we've had to figure it out, we've had to learn it. And Cliff and Eric have been in to help us with them. And we've finally sussed it, but yeah, we are continually producing new patterns. I don't know if any of you heard of are you all up to date with your scissor news? But we've recently started selling the cut-right pattern, which was, I think, discontinued in the 80s. But it's this really cool shaped scissor that it's maybe been 15 years since the project started to bring them back. And now they're finally in production. So yeah, we keep trying to expand the list of scissors that we are producing, but every scissor brings a new challenge that we have to learn. Cliff and Eric were working on 400 different models, and they know the quirk of each of them. I think I'm working on max 20 different models at the moment, but how many scissors can you need? To be fair, I think they made too many scissor types in the past. But yeah, we're still producing them. Are we hiring? Thing is, we've never posted that we're hiring. What happens is that a lot of people get in touch with Paul, the owner, and when Paul feels like we're ready, at the moment, the only reason we can't expand the team is because we don't have the machinery. Because there are certain things we can't outsource, we have tons of machinery just lining the walls of the place, but they each serve just one purpose on a small part of the scissor, so you get traffic in the workshop. If you want to expand back into the workshop, then we probably have space for more people, but it's worth reaching out to, the email or the Instagram page, because he's always considering it, yeah. Cool. Yes.
You said the part of scissor making you don't like. What's the part of scissor making you like the most?
I like the most. This bench here is like the prestigious spot in the workshop. This is the putter's bench. This is considered the highly skilled part, the bit with the hammer and putting the scissors together. Yes, I know it doesn't sound it, but trust me, it's hard. But to sit there and smack scissors with a hammer, it's fun, it's cool, and it's probably it has the least impact on your body. I do feel a bit guilty spending a full day at the putter's bench though, while all the other guys are on the polishing motors or the grinding saddles. But it is my favourite job there. And I didn't even mention the machinery. I'm sorry, I'll be quick, I swear. The machinery, we are also trying to keep it as classic as possible. All the machines there are the same machines they've been using for the past 40 years. Our grinding saddles are like wooden horse saddles that sit above stones almost a metre in diameter. One of the grinding saddles is the original that was put on in well, we saw it in a picture in 1904, so we still have some of the aspects of the workshop that are exactly the same. And we aren't just doing it for the sake of story. These are, honestly, great ways of making scissors. These machines are just better at making scissors. So we aren't just keeping the old machinery for the sake of it. There's a true reason for the quality of scissor that we are making, that we maintain these really old machines. Yes?
I've got 2 questions.
Not a problem.
So my first is, what takes you from being a putter to a master putter? Is that a self-proclaimed title, or do you get the certificate, or that kind of thing? And then my second question, I'll ask both of them in unison, is, do you think you'll still be making scissors at the age of 80?
Okay. With regards to being a master putter, Cliff and Eric, have people heard of Cutler's Hall? I don't know much about it, but it's like Freemasons almost in the centre. They have like a club and they wear top hats. But Cliff and Eric have literally been declared master putters by the people at Cutler's Hall. They even were given a certificate, I believe, by the mayor at the time. I can't remember who it was. But it's normally a title given to you by your employer. To be a master putter, I imagine it wouldn't be my boss Paul that would have to bestow that title on me. It would probably be Cliff or Eric. But they had to undergo like 5-year apprenticeships when they were 13 to learn scissor making, and they were telling me that they had to sweep floors for 2 years of that. So I think they're a bit bitter that I just got to jump straight in. But yeah, I think to proudly call myself a master putter, Cliff and Eric, one of those two, would need to tell me. Whether I'm making scissors at the age of 80, I'm sorry, I'll keep it quick because I've gone over. But when I started there, remember when I said, I'm sorry they don't have experience making scissors? I said to Cliff, like, why... But before that conversation came back, I said to Cliff, why are you not looking for other scissor makers in Sheffield? And they were like, well, they're all in the cemetery. Like, there were just none alive. That's the problem. They just... no one was trained recently enough to be a scissor maker. Now, the thing is that these two are in their 80s. It's like survivorship bias almost. Their bodies could really cope with it. I don't know if I will have the mobility to make scissors at 80, but these guys, for 80 odd, they're really sprightly. You know, they don't seem to have problems with the body at all. Whereas if I spend 2 hours on one of the grinding saddles and, you know, I'm hunched over for a week. So hopefully if I'm making scissors when I'm 80, it's because I got to spend a lot of time at the putter's bench. But yeah, I hope so, but I'll not get my hopes up. Yeah. Right. Well, that's everything from me. I hope it was okay. One of the problems is knowing how interested other people will be in scissors. But I'm telling you, love it. You won't regret it if you look into it. But yeah, I've been Jonathan Reid. Look into Ernest Wright. Thanks very much.
That's Jonathan Reid, everyone. Come on, you can do better than that. Big round of applause, Jonathan Reid. See, I told you I was really bad at names, and I didn't mess his name up at the start just to make that joke work, honestly. Yeah, other than that, really interesting actually. My only previous experience with scissors were my crazy ex using them as a weapon. So yeah, thank you for that. I enjoyed that, and I hope you all did as well, yeah? Next up, we're just going to have a quick 10-minute break, so if you've just got enough time to go to the toilet,